podcast. Please hold. Your ears are very important to us. Please hold on, and our program will begin shortly. The Soundcheck podcast is coming up. Please continue to hold. Keep up with the Soundcheck podcast and everything that's happening in the New Sounds empire. Just go to newsounds.org and follow us on social media. All of the icons are in the top right corner of the page. All of our other musicians are currently playing for other customers. Please stay with us, and someone will play for you in just a moment. From newsounds.org, it's time for another live in-studio performance in our series, The Soundcheck Podcast, streaming live on Facebook and YouTube. I'm John Schaefer. Steve Earle has been many things: a multiple Grammy Award-winning musician, an actor, a writer, a political activist, but he's also a music fan. Specifically, he's a fan of two of the late, great Texas songwriters, Townes Van Zandt and Guy Clark. Now, 10 years ago, Steve recorded an album called Townes, which was devoted to Van Zandt's music. Now it's Guy Clark's turn. Steve Earle and the Dukes have a new album called Simply Guy. It includes versions of 16 of Guy Clark's songs, and it brings Steve Earle back to our studio. He's going to start us off with Dublin Blues.
I wish I was in Austin, in the chiller parlor bar, drinking Mad Dog margaritas and not caring where you are. But here I am in Dublin, just rolling cigarettes, holding back and choking back the shakes with every breath. So forgive me all my anger, forgive me all my faults. Ain't no need to forgive me for thinking what I thought. I love you from the get-go, I'll love you till I die. I love you on the Spanish steps the day you said goodbye. Now I'm just a poor boy, work's my middle name. If money was a reason, then I wouldn't be the same. I'll stand up and be counted, I'll face up to the truth. I can walk away from trouble, but I can't walk away from you. So forgive me all my anger, forgive me all my faults. Ain't no need to forgive me for thinking what I thought. I love you from the get-go, I love you till I die. I loved you on the Spanish steps the day you said goodbye. I've been to Fort Worth. I've been to Spain. I've been too proud to come in out of the rain. I've seen the David, seen the Mona Lisa too. I've heard Doc Watson play Columbus Stockade Blues. So forgive me all my anger, forgive me all my faults. Ain't no need to forgive me for thinking what I thought. I love you from the get-go, I love you till I die. I love you on the Spanish steps the day you said goodbye. I wish I was in Austin, in the chili parlor bar, drinking Mad Dog margaritas and not caring where you are.
Dublin Blues, live performance from Steve Earle, solo here in our studio, a song by the great Texas songwriter Guy Clark, and the lead-off track from the new album by Steve Earle and the Dukes called simply Guy. Comes out on Friday. Steve, good to have you back.
It's good to be back.
So, we all have friends who've been such a part of our lives that we can't even remember the first time we met them.
Right.
But then most of us have friends where that initial meeting is forever burned into our memories.
Yeah.
Which was Guy for you?
The latter. And both Guy and Towns, because I went looking for both of them. I went to Houston looking for Towns when I was 17, and I went looking to Nashville looking for Guy when I was 19. It was
how hard was he to find?
Towns took a while because he didn't live anywhere, and I had to wait for him to come back around to Houston. I'd been in the same room with him once in Austin before that. Jerry Jeff Walker's 33rd birthday party. I crashed it, but I finally met him at the Old Quarter in Houston. Guy I just had to wait for him to come to town, and then I knew where he hung out, but he had his house in the country by the time I moved to Nashville in November of '74. And I walked in one night to Bishop's Pub, and Richard Dobson, who's not with us anymore, was a great songwriter in his own right, that was tending bar, and he said, Guy's here, he's in the back. And, so I went in the back, and Guy was shooting pool, him and Susanna, his wife, and who's quite a songwriter himself and a great painter. And then Jim Stafford and Deborah Allen, and they were shooting pool. And I was, I just kind of had this cowboy hat that nobody would have recognized me without this time. Just a black bull rider blocked, Americans, the brand name, AAA hat, kind of what everybody wore that I knew. And I just kind of had it pulled down low over my eyes and got back in the corner, tried to be inconspicuous and wait for an opening. And he was lining up a shot, and I just happened to be, I wasn't in his way, but I was in his line of vision. Mm-hmm. And he just sort of looked up through those eyebrows and he said, nice hat. And that kind of started the conversation. And he found out very quickly that I knew Towns. And so that I started getting invited to stuff. And it was the beginning of a real live, it was a friendship, but it also was, and I'm very fortunate, it was a real live old world style apprenticeship.
Yeah.
And I benefited from that greatly.
So how does that work with something as elusive as songwriting? I mean, what did you learn from Guy? And
Guy a lot directly. I mean, Towns was like give you a copy of Bury My Heart in Wounded Knee and tell you to go read it and tell you to put the cap back on the bottle or somebody would kick it over, which was useful information in my life at the time. But Guy would show me how he laid a song out on paper so that, number the lines so that I knew how many lines I had in the first verse, and so go down and number the second verse so you know what the blanks you're filling in are, sort of mathematically, and then you can look at it. Showed me how to notice what I did in the first verse that was pure inspiration, which was sometimes like complicated internal rhyme schemes that came to me, naturally. But then when you don't do it in the second verse, your second verse is never going to be as good. So he said, no, now you need to get your second verse to poetically live up to your first verse. And he saw me writing with a pen one day and said, what are you doing? Write with a pencil, with a big eraser. And he told me songs are never finished until you play them for people.
Yeah.
Because we were singer-songwriters. we were taking money from publishing companies, kind of under false pretenses, but we weren't there to write, the next
for other people,
next Ronnie Millsap single. That was not what we were there
Although, ironically, a lot of Guy's big hits were not his own recordings; they were other.
No,
people.
I mean the biggest hits he had were other people. He never. I don't think he ever got, above maybe the 60s or 70s, maybe slightly higher than that with his own records on the country charts, and never got on the pop charts at all. He had Ricky Skaggs, one of the biggest records. Parking Lot that you play, that's one of the biggest records that he had. It was pretty late in his career. So I included songs like that. But to me, it was all about, we were the same kind of writer naturally. We were story songwriters, and so there was a lot I could learn from him. And so I paid a lot of attention to it. And the other thing he did was if you've ever seen Heartworn Highways, that documentary about that period in Nashville and Austin, there's a scene where it's actually in the outtakes that they've added to this deluxe version. But Guy's getting me, it's Christmas Eve at Guy and Susanna's house. He's getting me to play this song I just written called The Mercenary Song, which I didn't record till years later. But he said, but he's telling everybody around the table, it's like Steve Young and I think Billy Joe Shaver's there, a couple of other people. And he says, listen to this song. Listen to this song. He got me my publishing deal. He went to his publisher and harassed him until he finally signed me.
So your two kind of musical lodestars, Townes Van Zandt, Guy Clark, were they friends?
Oh, they were best friends. Unconditional best friends until Townes passed away.
Okay. And then the three of you did a live record back in the mid-'90s.
Yeah, I know the date of that because it was September 13th, 1995. It was my first, sobriety anniversary, just by happenstance. And so I hadn't been, out of jail and sober very long. And it was just the three of us, and it was a fundraiser for a dental care for indigents, organization that Susanna Clark worked with, and so she's the one that got us into it, and they made it into that Live at the Bluebird record, and it was a trip. It was the last time the three of us were all in the same room together because we were all on the road so much. It just all three of us never happened again.
So let me ask you, I mean, obviously you've thought through this because you've done the Townes record 10 years ago, but how do you find your own way into a body of work of someone that, you admired so much, learned so much from, and
right.
in Guy's case, where there are sort of other authoritative versions of these songs, like the Jerry Jeff Walker or the Ricky Skaggs that you have to deal with?
But first off, I went with the stuff that I knew and the stuff that I was most emotionally connected to. A couple of things I made, I wasn't as much. Parking Lot I did because it was later. It was a big hit, and I wanted to get some. I had to kind of work to get later stuff in because my connection to him, closely was early. I was, around when his first record came out. I sang on one song on it. I played bass with him on the very first tour that he did. And so those are the songs I was most connected to. Most of those songs I knew by heart. I didn't have to put a piece of paper in front of me to sing them. I on both the Townes record and the Guy record, I played these things as close to the way I remember those guys playing them as I possibly could. Jerry Jeff's version of LA Freeway is very different than Guy's, and I love that version, but when I heard Guy sing it, which wasn't until I got to Nashville, because his first record didn't come out till a year after I got there, I was very much aware of that song, very much aware of who he was, but hearing him do it, I went, oh, that's the singer-songwriter part. And it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the Jerry Jeff version, and I'm sure it was a financial pleasure, but it's not, as Kinky Friedman says, but it's not like it's still, there's a thing about a song like that, especially as personal a song as LA Freeway is. When you hear the person that wrote it sing it, it's something special. Because this job is empathy. People don't care about what I feel or what Guy feels. They care about what we feel that they can relate to, that connects to something that happens in their life. And everybody, with Guy, we were opposites in that respect too. I talk all the time. He was very quiet. And he didn't like big cities, and I do, and I've been running to them all my life. In L.A., he lived there kind of by accident, and, he started a guitar shop in San Francisco, and he just went down to L.A. when that came apart. And, he got signed to his publishing deal out there, but he wanted to live in Nashville, and they asked him where he wanted to live, and he moved to Nashville. And I think L.A. Freeway was one of the first things that he wrote after he got there.
And Jerry Jeff Walker had the sort of hit version of the song.
Yeah, they knew each other back to the late 60s when Jerry Jeff would come to Houston to play The Jester and Sand Mountain, which was a coffee house. Mr. Bojangles was written in an apartment above Sand Mountain Coffee House that was actually Towns' apartment. And Jerry Jeff would come through and crash there, and that's where Mr. Bojangles was written. So there was a connection between Jerry Jeff and Gary B. White, who was the bass player in Circus Maximus, Jerry Jeff's first band, who was from Houston. That's how Jerry Jeff realized there was a little scene in Houston. And he was Jerry Jeff's whole MO in those days was to travel as much as possible and not stay around long enough to wear out his welcome. That's kind of what he did.
And he's on the record with you.
Yeah, I had to have Jerry Jeff there. And had to have Terry Allen, because after Towns was gone, they were probably best friends. And there's a lot of other people there. Mickey Raphael, Rodney Crowell, Emmy,
Emmy
just
Lou Harris.
all friends. Yeah.
Yep.
So,
well, it's just you and the guitar here in the studio today. You want to do L.A. Freeway?
no, we'll flip it.
Right.
I know we talked about a lot
yes,
I have a little. Well, I'm not gonna. The last time I saw a guy, I was he was in a rehab center because he'd gone through some chemo and they were trying to get him home, which they did a few days later. And my routine had become, go to Nashville, see my mom, see Guy, do whatever I had to do. Then on my way out, see my mom, see Guy. And because he wasn't touring anymore, so I couldn't run into him on the road. And somebody decided it'd be a nice thing to do to bring him some barbecue. And he, I got there late because I'd been at my mom's first, and the barbecue was gone, and Guy was asleep. So I said hi and bye to everybody I felt like I needed to. And then I was on my way out the door, and just as I got to the door, Guy's eyes pop open, and he said, "Steven." And don't even think about it because nobody else ever called me that. And he I said, "Hey man, how was that barbecue?" And he said, "Pork." And because 44 years of living in Tennessee, Guy Clark never accepted pork as proper barbecue. So the last thing that my teacher said to me was pork, and that was totally okay because it was so Guy.
So you're going to do Desperados "Waiting for a Train," which is one of his, in my opinion, one of his all-time great songs. And here's Steve Earle.
I'd play the Red River Valley. He sat in the kitchen and cried, run his fingers through 70 years of living. Wonder, Lord, is every well I drilled gone dry. His friends, me and this old man, like desperados waiting for a train. Desperados waiting for a train. He's a drifter and driller of all wells, an old school man of the world. Taught me how to drive his car when he's too drunk to. Then he'll wink and give me money for the girls. And our lives were like some old western movie, like desperados waiting for a train. Desperados waiting for a train. From the time I could walk to take me with them to a bar called the Green Frog Cafe. There were old men with beer guts and diamond nose, lying about their lives while they played. And I was just a kid that called a sidekick, like desperados waiting for a train. Desperados waiting for a train. One day I looked up and he's pushing 80. Round the back of stains all down his chin. To me, he's one of the heroes of this country. Why is they all dressed up like them old men? Drinking beer, playing Moon and 42. Like desperados waiting for a train. Desperados waiting for a train. The day before he died, I went to see him. I was grown, he's almost gone. Closed eyes and dreamed us up a kitchen. Sang another verse to that old song. So come on, Jack, son of a bitch is coming home. Like desperados waiting for a train. Desperados waiting for a train. Desperados waiting for a train. Desperados waiting for a train.
Steve Earle live here in our New York studio on this edition of the Soundcheck podcast from newsounds.org, and another song by Guy Clark, Desperados Waiting for a Train. You'll find a version with the full band with the Dukes on the new album called Simply Guy, comes out on Friday. And you mentioned, Steve, that Guy had a guitar shop up in the Bay Area for a while.
Right. He and a guy named Minor Wilson moved out there and opened it up. And somebody sent me a picture recently. I got a guitar player from the Bay Area. Just heard I was making this record. And I do Hardly Strictly Bluegrass there every year. And somehow he tracked me down and sent me a picture of Guy, Minor, and this guitar player, Tom, and Bobby Weir, like in 1969, sitting in front of the shop.
Wow.
And it's they were a guitar repair shop. They didn't sell guitars. They worked on guitars. And
he was like a luthier. Right?
Oh no, he built guitars, beautiful guitars. He built classical guitars originally. He and Minor did, and then that business didn't fly. So Guy went south to L.A. He worked at the Dobro factory. He set necks for the Dopero brothers and at the Dobro factory in Orange County. And then he moved to Nashville, and then he worked on all our guitars when I first got there to town. I had several guitars that he worked on over the years.
So what are you playing today?
What, this guitar?
Yeah, this guitar.
This is kind of one of my road guitars. They're all M-size Martins, which are, I don't know, for guitar nerds, that's one size bigger than the triple O size guitar. It's a 16-inch guitar, but it's not the big, deep dreadnought thing. I still, when I play with the bluegrass band, I use a dreadnought size Martin, but for playing all night, every night, usually when I'm playing live, I'm using a pickup anyway, and I can add bass electronically. And I figured out that ergonomically, it was just sort of kicking my butt to play that great big guitar, because it puts your arms in a more awkward position. So it's a little easier to control, and they're great sounding guitars. They're jumbo guitars, except they're not quite that deep.
Yeah.
And it makes them a little more controllable.
Did Guy work on any of your... I mean, you got two here in the studio.
Not only the ones that I have now, because the ones he worked on were guitars I owned in the 70s. And any guitar I had in the 70s and 80s went in my arm, and I started all over again in the 90s.
Yeah. Steve Earle with us on this edition of the podcast. Let me read something from the liner notes that you wrote. Now he's gone, speaking about Guy Clark, now he's gone, and when I follow him, because I always have, I'll leave this world with only one regret, and that is that I never wrote a song with Guy Clark.
Right.
How did that not happen?
Well, I'm not a co-writer very often. I do it, but I do it for specific reasons with certain people. Neither one of us were originally. In fact, Guy was one of the things he taught me was co-writing is a waste of time. But we both got older, and he also didn't told me I shouldn't use a rhyme dictionary or thesaurus when we were both younger. But I found out later he had been using one for years, and I had been using one for years, and we finally kind of came clean to each other about that. But it's like it's just that. He asked me to. He said, we should write a song. At the end of his life, he was writing with all these younger writers just to keep writing. The difference between Townes and Guy is like the difference between Kerouac and Ginsberg. It's largely discipline and, and 20 more years on the planet, so because of discipline was part of it. I mean, Guy wasn't an angel, but he was, he didn't get into trouble quite as quickly as Townes did or as deeply as Townes did with that kind of stuff. And he just wrote every day. He was very workman about it, and he had to find a way to keep writing, and co-writing is how he did it, getting in with younger people, and he wrote some great songs. Parking Lot's one of them. There's but that with Daryl Scott. It's just and so when he asked me, I planned to do it. And it just never happened because I don't live there anymore, and it never came together. It never happened, and I'm not big on regrets because they're not good for people like me in recovery. But that one's tough. That one's tough to shake because I have to take responsibility for it. He couldn't go anywhere. I needed to get my butt there, and I didn't do it. So
he lived, as you say, a much longer life than Townes Van Zandt.
20 years, yeah, 23
But
years.
Still, when the end came for Guy Clark, it came pretty fast.
Yeah, I mean, we were surprised, I guess, because he had had cancer for over 10 years, and then his health deteriorated really quickly. But a lot of that was heart disease that brought about by years and years of chemo, because that's what it does. And he never did quit smoking. He quit drinking only when chemo made it impossible for him to drink anymore, which was several years before he passed away. He smoked cigarettes and smoked other things, and he didn't do everything the doctors told him to do. Mm-hmm. But he was tough. And he just kept himself working. That's the main thing that he did about it was he kept, trying to find a way to write songs.
Well, that idea that
he started building guitars again, too, after not building any for 20 years. And he built about, I don't know, maybe 19, 20 guitars.
Wow.
And
where are they?
Some people have one. Everybody that knows him, that's close to him, has one except me, I think. And I don't know. I think he intended for me to have one, but just another one of those things. I wasn't there all the time. One day I tried, I collect guitars. I'm pretty famous for it. And I said, Guy, I want to buy one of your guitars. And he said, won't sell you one. Might give you one. And, that's the kind of sentences Guy spoke in. He wrote a lot of times because he didn't talk very much. And I think there were two witnesses. And I think people that speak fluent Guy Clark agree that was his intention was to give me a guitar, but it just never happened. So I don't have one.
Yeah. Well, the idea that the creative process can also be a discipline. That you don't just sit around and wait for inspiration to strike you.
That's what it is. That's what I learned from him and Suzanne. These things that artists do are called disciplines for a reason. No one's going to tell you when to punch a clock. So if you don't, find a way to discipline yourself to do it, then it's not going to happen. And it'll stop happening entirely eventually. It happened to me. I finally took enough drugs that I didn't write anything for 4.5 years because it was a full-time, job just to support my drug habit. So, and as soon as I got sober, I wrote Goodbye. And then I kept writing after that. So it's just, it's a hard thing. I mean, to decide that you're going to be, and to write songs at the level of art. We were post Bob Dylan songwriters, and that's how we thought of ourselves. We were making art. That's where the bar was. So Susanna was one of the major arbiters of whether it was art or not, because she was a fine artist. She painted, and she painted beautifully. And so she knew a lot about it, and she was the person we were always trying to impress when we wrote new songs and gotten around playing them for each other.
Mm-hmm. She would appear with him, right?
She never really performed. I don't think I ever saw her perform. I saw her sing, maybe once or twice saw her sing, Black Haired Boy or something, early on. And then
there's some photos or videos.
Yeah, it's in Heartworn Highways in that documentary. I think there's some footage of her singing, but she just didn't. She had no desire to perform. She wanted to write and paint. And I wish she'd painted more, actually, to tell you the truth. I was always kind of hard on her because she didn't paint, because she painted her stuff. Have you ever seen the cover of Quarter Moon 10 Cent Town, that Emmylou Harris record? That dark background. It's a dark sky with Easy From Now, and it's a line from that song which Susanna wrote. And that the cover's beautiful, but that's a painting of Susanna's. And that painting of a shirt hanging on the wall on the cover of Old Number One, that's a painting of Susanna's as well.
Okay. Your next record will have one of your own paintings on the cover.
It's actually, it's a single, a 7-inch coming out for
Record Store Day.
Yeah. When I finished this record, I knew I was going to disappoint somebody, and a lot of people, because there were 16 songs. And like I said, the difference, it's like the difference between Kerouac and Ginsberg. I don't know if you've ever seen the complete poems of Allen Ginsberg, but it's a big book.
Oh, it's massive, yeah.
So there's no, I knew I was going to disappoint somebody, but Go to Hardly Strictly Bluegrass right after we finished the record, and Los Lobos rolls up in a van. Louis Perez gets out, and Louis is the principal lyricist in Lobos, a big Guy Clark fan. So he came over and said, "I heard you did the Guy record." I said, "Yeah, we did." I said, "Did you record The Cape?" And I said, "No." He said, "Did you?" And I wasn't that connected to The Cape. That was a choice. I knew people would want to hear it, but I just decided, I can't do this justice because I'm not as connected to it as the other songs. It just wasn't one that kind of got me. But and then he said, "Did you do El Coyote?" And I should have done El Coyote. So I went into Electric Lady here in New York as soon as I got back, and I recorded 2 songs solo, and because I have to have something exclusive for Record Store Day every year. Record Store Day is important to me. These last of these mom and pop record stores out there, there's more left in Europe. There's more left other places in the world, but here, there's some cities that don't have a record store at all, and so I think it's important to help them keep going. And we do an exclusive recording for Record Store Day every year. This year it's a 7-inch with El Coyote on one side, and then an old song of guys that he never recorded, but Townes recorded it, called "Don't Let the Sunshine Fool You." Townes' version is on the late great Townes Van Zandt. And then normally Tony Fitzpatrick does my covers, and he has for a long time since I Feel All Right. And but this time I decided for that, to go ahead and do a cover myself. And so I did a little painting that I did it on the road with what I had available on the bus, and it turned out pretty good. I'm pretty proud of it. It's El Coyote is the A-side, so that the painting has to do with that.
Yeah. Record Store Day this year is what, April 13th, something like that?
I can't remember. Yeah, it's always in April, and I can't. Yeah,
it is April 13th.
Okay, cool.
So those are solo performances on this 7-inch, and of course you're doing solo. These songs, while they're great with a band, they
hold up. That's
really
what we were
sound
doing.
great.
We were writing songs that hold up on, writing them on one guitar, and they hold up on one guitar. And I think we all, like I said, they're not songs for you, play them for people. And we were all, had come out of coffee houses. This whole little salon of songwriters that I hung out with in Nashville, every one of us had come out of coffee houses at one point.
All right, you want to do L.A. Freeway for us?
Sure.
All right, another Guy Clark song played live by Steve Earle.
Pack up all your dishes, maiden of all good wishes. Say goodbye to the landlord for me. Some bitches always bored me. Throw out some old LA papers, mold a box of vanilla wafers. Adios to all this concrete. Gonna get in some dirt road back street. If I can just get off of this LA freeway without getting killed or caught, I'll be down the road in a cloud of smoke juice of land. I ain't bought, and it's here's to you, old skinny Dennis. Only one I think I will miss. I can hear your bassman singing, sweet and low like a gift you're bringing. Play it for me one more time now. Gotta give it all we can now. I believe every word you're saying. Just you keep on playing. If I can just get off of this LA freeway without getting killed to call, I'll be down the road in a cloud of smoke to some land. I ain't bought, and you put the pink card in the mailbox. Leave the key in the old front door lock. They will find it likely as not. Sure there's something we have forgot. Oh, Susanna, don't you cry, babe. Love's a gift to surely hand me. We got something to believe in. Don't you think it's time we're leaving? If I can just get off of this LA freeway without getting killed or caught, I'll be down the road in a cloud of smoke to some land. I ain't bought if I just get off of this LA freeway without getting killed or caught. Pack up all your dishes, made note of all good wishes. Say goodbye to the landlord for me. Some bitches always bored me.
That is L.A. Freeway, written by Guy Clark, performed live by Steve Earle here in the studio. That was an early song by Guy Clark.
Yeah, Jeff recorded it really early on.
Yeah. So. And probably to this day, the only song I can think of that references Nilla wafers.
yeah. One of those deals, yeah. He had that thing about detail and thing about things everyday life. That's what he did.
Yeah.
And it's just that's probably the greatest story song writer that ever lived, simply because he knew how to make you see, the space in which the story's taking place.
But also the form you were talking about before, the structure, the architecture of the song, you know, how many lines and the internal rhyming scheme and all that. And one thing that, he probably got this from like the British and Appalachian folk traditions is the repetition of the first verse at the end of the song.
Yeah, he did it. He didn't do it all the time, but he did it sometimes. He liked doing that. I've done it a few times over the years because he did it, but it's about reestablishing that, like where you started. It's like a beginning and a middle and an end. And sometimes if you want people to just, it's a device.
Right.
What happens is that it becomes a loop in your brain and in your heart. That's what that device does.
Yeah. Steve Earle performing this summer, and you'll be here in the metropolitan area, sort of skirting New York, May 10th at the Newton Theater in Newton, New Jersey, Saturday, May 11th out on Long Island at the May Day Music Festival, and then Monday, May 13th up in Ridgefield, Connecticut at the Ridgefield Playhouse. And September is always Camp Copperhead, right?
Camp Copperhead, and which is moving to September. It was June for years. We're moving it to basically around Labor Day this year, and we'll be announcing soon. We have,
our whole lineup. But it's something I look forward to, and also.
It's like a songwriting camp.
It's a camp. It's like it's a course that I teach, and it's like there's other teachers, and it's about. Some of the people that come are songwriters, and we've found a few people over the years. There's a girl named Roseanne Reed who came to our very first year, and she's become faculty since, and her first record's coming out this year. She's Scottish. It took me 3 years to figure this out, that I knew her father and I knew her uncle, because her father's Craig Reed, who's half of the Proclaimers, and I don't know why that didn't occur to me when she turned up 18 years old. Well, probably because she was 18 years old and sleeping in a pup tent, which blew down the first night, and some of the other girls took her in, but she's incredible. She writes really, really great songs, and she's a great singer. But there's other people that are never going to be songwriters, and I tell everybody I can't make you a songwriter if you aren't one already. But you can come, and if you're a songwriter, you'll be a better songwriter when you leave, I think. And if you're not, then you'll know more about how it's done.
Well, and maybe sort of passing on the knowledge that people like Townes and Guy.
There's a lot of Townes and Guy in it, because that's where I learned from. Yeah. Oh, also, John Henry's Friends will be the middle of December. We haven't locked the date in yet, but the benefit for the Keswill School, where my son John Henry attends, and that's usually our big our big show in New York City every year, in the city proper.
Well, Steve, it's always great to have you here in our studios at WNYC. Congratulations on the new record, on Guy.
Thank you.
This is Soundcheck.
You can almost feel the weight of the gun, and it's faster than snakes or the blink of an eye, and it's a time for all slow men to die, and his eyes get squinty and his fingers twitch as he empties his gun at the son of a bitch, and he's